Hi, my name is Delphine Labbé, and I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Disability and Human Development at the University of Illinois at Chicago. And I'm going to present today about SLOPE, supporting snowsport leisure opportunities for people with disability, a research project that I led with this fantastic team. You have Stacy Manella, PhD candidate at Ball University, but I was previously in kinesiology at the University of British Columbia. Dr. Miller, professor in occupational science and occupational therapy. Dr. Best from University of Laval, Dr. Bunden from UBC in kinesiology, Chris McBride from SCI BC, and Jeff Sauvé, the past executive director of BC Adaptive Snowsports, our partner in this project. So our community partner was BC Adaptive Snowsport, or BCAS, who is a provincial sports organization that support and promote adaptive skiing and snowboarding for participants of all ages and living with various types of disabilities in British Columbia. They are overseeing 15 clubs that are located in small local resorts or in larger destination resorts across British Columbia. This is what you can see on this map here. Those programs offer learn to ski programming on a daily or weekly basis. And sometimes they also offer specialized programming such as learn to race, racing club, backcountry skiing, or veterans camp. The goal of SLOPE was to study the impact of adaptive snow sports for people with disabilities and especially their quality of participation, to document the strategies that are used in programs to support quality of participation, as well as understand what factors may limit sustained participation in adaptive snow sports. We used the quality of parasport and participation framework as our conceptual framework for this project, because it has been shown that improving the quality of participation in leisure time physical activity have a greater impact for the well-being and social participation of people with disabilities than solely increasing the frequency of the activities. So we wanted to assess the experience of people with disability on the 6th dimension of the framework, which are autonomy, which relate to having independence, choice, control, belongingness, which is about experiencing acceptance and respect from others, feeling included at an interpersonal and societal level, being challenged, so being sufficiently challenged in your physical activity. The 4th dimension of engagement is about feeling focused, feeling immersed in the activities and the feeling of flow. Mastery is about the accomplishment, sense of accomplishment and success. And finally, the dimension of meaning is about having meaningful goal for yourself or for your larger community. As part of the QPPF, there's also 3 pillars that regroup different strategies to better support quality of participation. The first pillar is around the physical environment. You can think about accessibility, transportation, equipment, for example. The other strategies pillar is around program. So the program size, the program costs, the way the program is being run. And finally, the social environment is about both instructors or staff, but also peers, family, and the larger community that can be involved in the program. For SLOPE, we had 3 different ways of collecting data. We did interviews with 12 BCAS club leaders about the strategies and the way they are running their program for people with disabilities. We did a survey with 104 members living with disability around their experience in adaptive snow sport and especially their quality of participation. And we did interviews with people who used to be participating in adaptive snow sports but stopped. We wanted to understand what were the challenges that didn't allow them to maintain their participation. So our main findings will be presented around the experience of the participants and what support quality of participation, the strategies, the needs and challenges by the organizations, and also what can be challenges to maintain participation in adaptive snow sports. So in terms of the experience of the snow, there was different predictors that came out as impacting the quality of participation in adaptive snow sports. Using equipment was predicting low quality of participation, while having 2 instructor or more was predicting high quality of participation, but also program barriers, environmental barriers, and individual barrier were also predicting quality of participation, which makes us think that despite the barriers that people with disability are experiencing, they still have quality of participation in adaptive sports. In terms of the strategies that the clubs were putting in place, we found that they were really trying to carve a run for everyone. So they were customizing their lesson to address individual needs. They were considering the skiing experience as a whole experience, both on and off snow, and also trying to address the physical and economic accessibility barrier that people with disability can face. But they also talked about how we need a village to run those programs. So they talked about the relationship with the host resorts that is particularly important, but also the link with the community, especially to get volunteers to be part of the program. And finally, they also talked about how there was a variety of operations. Actually, they were all working a little bit differently in terms of how they were managing volunteers, depending on the resource they were having access to, but also the way they were doing their marketing and trying to reach out to the community. And they all experienced challenge in having a sustainable growth because they were getting more and more popular and having less resources to serve people with disability. And finally, in terms of challenge to maintain participation, what we learned is that despite all the benefits that people with disability get from adaptive snow sports, such as opportunity to create social connection, be challenged, build confidence, being outdoor, many people with disability did not continue their involvement in adaptive sports. There was different reasons, as you can see here, some personal, some related to program or to the environment, but they were mostly related to the program or the sport. And I like to highlight, for example, that the eligibility and availability of the program was a important reason why people stopped participating, because they aged out of the program that were offered sometimes just to kids. Also negative experience with volunteers or being injured during their participation. So from our study, we came up with different recommendations. So we want to recommend that it's important to increase training on how to use specialized equipment and providing proper equipment, because we saw that it's a predictor of low quality of participation. And a lot of people with disability need that equipment to participate in adaptive snow sport. The importance of reducing the environmental and programmatic barriers to enable more individuals to stay active in the winter. And that means especially develop policies or incentive for resorts to make their environment accessible on and off snow. Develop resources to help organizations learn from each other, because they use different variety of strategies, and that can be useful for them to learn about the best ways to engage people with disability in winter sports. Also increase awareness about the programs and access to information. Sometimes programs are available, but people just don't know about them. Increase the length of the season if possible, but I'll especially offer more options for progress for skiers that might be more advanced and don't want to go down the competitive route. Having more instructors and volunteers being trained and being available is particularly important. So providing funding and resources to help organizations doing so. And finally, offering funding for individuals so they can participate and cover the cost maybe of transportation, but also funding to programs, especially to try to retain and maintain the instructor and volunteer being well trained. So thank you very much for your time. And if you have any question, you can reach out to me at this email address. And also we have a different paper that has been published on those results. If you are interested, please reach out.
Thank you so much for that great presentation. We've had a couple great parasport presentations here today. First, just wondering, you talked a bit about the quality of participation being predicted by use of equipment, which is kind of interesting in sport because equipment is a big part of using sport. So can you talk a bit more about why equipment was a predictor of low quality participation, and what are some ways that sport organizations might think about that when they're developing their programs and making it a bit more high quality in that regard?
Yeah, thank you for your question. Yeah, and it's something we discussed. So all those results have been presented to the club member. I was lucky enough to share back the results for an entire weekend of discussion with BCAS clubs, and their reaction, I think I'm going to use with the feedback they provided around that, because at first they were surprised, but then when they thought about it a little bit more, they realized first, a lot of the clubs don't have all the equipment they need. So, and the equipment was especially for skiers who would have visual impairment, or skier would use sit ski. So sit ski is kind of a boot for skier, right? So it's their boot, so it has to be snug, it has to be comfortable, and there's so many type of model that exist. But sometimes some clubs don't necessarily have all the models that maybe would fit better the person. So there's sometimes an aspect of availability of equipment, but also what came out and what people shared is that sometimes it's the instructor or the volunteer is not trained enough on how to teach about those equipment. I think it's something, when you learn regular skiing or like non-adaptive, sometimes you don't necessarily think about the boots as a specific type of equipment that you would train the person to use. But in adaptive skiing, in addition to the skis, you need to learn how to use those other equipment. On the other side, I think I would say for visual impairment, it was also a matter of sometimes people would like to be a little bit more independent, and they didn't necessarily had maybe the microphones, or a lot of programs they would rely on just having vests or guides, and actually some people would like to have like that little bit high-tech equipment that allows you to increase your ability in sports, like maybe more racing or skiing in front, because you're still in communication, and then your volunteers can tell you what's happening that you cannot see. So yeah, that would be my answer to that. There's different level of it, but training and access and maintaining equipment as well is one of the things.
Great, thank you so much. We have time for one more quick question if there's anybody who wants to jump in. Yep, Danielle.
Thank you for your presentation. So interesting balance between wanting more trained instructors, but also having that volunteer aspect to the program. So I'm just wondering if you could speak on a little bit of how you would go about, encouraging volunteers to get training, but also being aware that, it is a time commitment and oftentimes a financial commitment.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think this is a challenge that all the clubs are having. But I think those that are able to maintain maybe a larger pool or a more regular pool, it's the relationship with the host mountain that makes a big difference. So if you can have perks, incentives to volunteer. And I think something I should specify, most programs, not the small local ones, have instructors that are like trained, like proper instructor, if I can say, but most of them, when I say instructor, they're actually volunteer instructor. So those incentives by the host mountain are very important. So being able to have a ski pass for the season, or being able to have outside incentive. I would say that a lot of the clubs, I think because they're small and they're run by sometimes there's one paid person in the program, they have sometimes a hard time just in the recognition of the volunteer. And I think this is true in adaptive sports overall, and sports from what I hear from the previous presentation, like the recognition of volunteers. Yes, you're like volunteer of the year or things like that, but I think having some budget, or even being able to have some part of your budget just to have a dinner for your volunteer at the end of the season. This is not something that the club can sometimes assess. And some of the programs are also during the day. So like the volunteers you can have, a lot of the clubs we talk to, their volunteers are aging and it's replacing them. That makes it a little bit harder. So being able to have more flexibility in the programs, offered evenings. This is not always possible because of the host of the mountain and how it run. But yeah, I would say and the challenge are different if you are a resort mountain or if you are a small local mountain too.
Great. Thank you so much, Delphine. That's all the time we have for questions today, but thanks again for joining us on Zoom.
Thank you. Thank you very much.